namely Benjamin and Judah. Now, after their captivity, the northern kingdom, when they were held captive and they were deported by the Assyrians, a remnant of those 10 tribes filtered down to the other 2 tribes. Why is that significant? Well, because it preserved the whole 12. It preserved the 12 tribes. Once the southern kingdom went into captivity by the Babylonians, their tribal identity was lost. So you can't meet a Jew today and say, and he can tell you that, yeah, I come from the tribe of Benjamin, or the tribe of Dan, or the tribe, you can't, because their identity is lost. And even then, these people are able to permeate through history. Because like I said, that God has a plan for them, let me tell you something, that nothing can thwart the sovereignty and purposes of God. When God fixes himself to do something, it will be done. Amen. So again, Southern Kingdom goes captive by the Babylonians, their tribal identity is lost, and just to add insult to injury, as they continue out through history, then they go into Roman persecution. We know that AD 70, their temple was destroyed, Jews are lost, they're not a nation any longer, just up until 1948, where they were able to reconstitute as a nation again. But from AD 70 to 1948, they were lost. No identity whatsoever, until God chose to restore them. So James's audience is twofold. It's to his kinsmen in the dispersion, but mainly his letter, his epistle, is focused to those Jews who were in the dispersion, who embraced the Christian faith. How do we know that? Well, he says, count it all joy, my brothers, the ones who take part with me in the Christian faith. So we can see there that because of their persecution, now he provides to them an admonition, an exhortation, instruction, but also an encouragement. Now, although this is a Jewish audience, this speaks to each and every one of us. Why? Because we all go through trial. We all go through the testing of our faith. We all do. That's not foreign to us. It's common to each and every one of us. There's many things that we can say that we have common. Our baptism, our union with Christ, union with his death, his burial and resurrection, and he's resurrected us to new life. Right? Those things are common to us. But if we were able to each and every one of us together, become in one accord and one mind, I think the most common thing we could talk about is trial. We all go through stuff. We all go through stuff. None of us is exempt. So, and as I was looking at the text, one of the things that stood out to me is that, you know, as great as this is, I think one of the hardest portions of the text is to count it all joy. Let me be honest with you. You can be honest with me. When I go through stuff, it's a little difficult to count it all joy. It's a little difficult to sit there as I'm going through something difficult and say, well, amen, I'm going to get through. Yeah, okay, sure. If you're that spiritual, praise God for you. But I'm not there in my sanctification yet. I have trouble counting it all joy when I go through different things. But what's helped me get through and be able to count it all joy is the fact that I've learned that the testing of my faith produces something. And what is that? Well, the text reveals it. It produces steadfastness. And when we let steadfastness have its full effect, meaning when we don't add to it, when we don't take away from it, when we don't strengthen it, when we don't weaken it, we'll be perfect and entire, lacking in nothing. Now, what does that mean? Does it mean that we'll be perfect? Because perfect? No, you can't be perfect. Jesus Christ is perfect. And you are perfect in his eyes because the righteousness has been given to you. But what that means is that we'll be perfect in our spiritual maturity. Whatever reason why God brought the test, you eventually will get through it. That's why we're able to count it all joy. Because we let it produce what it needs to. At least we should. We shouldn't add to it. We shouldn't strengthen it. We shouldn't weaken it. We should just let it take its full course. But we're all guilty of doing something. We're all guilty of putting our hands to it and trying to get out of it on our own. And we don't let God do what he needs to do. Because it's God who brought the test in the first place. Take your hands off. Let him take the wheel. Amen? So, I don't know about you, but like I said, I have trouble counting it all joy because I like to complain a lot. You know, when I'm going through stuff, you know, it's just, especially if I know that I'm not in prayer as much as I should, I'm not in the Word as much as I should, because we don't nearly pray and read the Word as much as we could, right? As much as we should. Maybe I'm wrong. But I like to complain, and I recently read a story of John Newton, which is the author of Amazing Grace. He says that there's a man, this is way back a couple decades ago, there's a man who just inherited $1 million. Right? Now, he's from New York, and in order to get his $1 million, he needs to travel a couple miles to get his inheritance. So he's in his carriage and he's on his way to get his inheritance, and 1 mile away from getting his inheritance, carriage breaks down. So what does this man do? He starts walking to go get his inheritance, but all he can do is complain all the way there. My carriage is broken. My carriage is broken. My carriage is broken. What does John Newton say? He goes, that's the Christian. That's me and you. All the way to heaven. My carriage is broken. My carriage is broken. Why doesn't it work? Why does this have to happen to go get our inheritance? All we do is complain. That's me and you. Why? Simply because we forget that the test, the trial, will produce something in us that has far more weight of glory. Now, what's the root problem of our complaining? Does anyone know? Unbelief. It's unbelief. The fact that you think that because this trial has been brought upon you, you might not make it through. That's the root problem of everything. It's the fact that we really don't believe. We forget what the text says, that the test is brought on by Christ, that it'll produce something in us, that eventually we will get through. So we disbelieve. See, I don't think I'm going to make it. Let me tell you, most of you know this, my son was stricken with cancer. Right? It's the hardest thing I've ever gone through. As a person, and as a couple, it's the hardest thing I've ever had to go through. Because there's nothing I can do. Absolutely nothing. 2 months old with malignant tumor. Now, I had to really dig deep in myself and say, okay, well, God, there's absolutely nothing I can do. My hope lies in you. But whatever